So you might have heard that Congress is off on vacation, and they're going to stay on vacation for the next 5 weeks. When they finally come back in September, it will only be for 10 days of work, and then they'll go on break again for the rest of the midterm election campaign. But when they do come back for that short 10-day session in September, House Republicans have one thing they say they definitely plan on taking up: Benghazi. Trey Gowdy, he is the head of the newly formed House Select Committee on Benghazi. He says that the first public hearing will be sometime in September, and it is going to feature more witnesses than ever before. When that select committee was announced this past spring, there was a lot of criticism, especially from Democrats. And one reason was that there had already been a lot of hearings and investigations on this same issue. There have already, in fact, been 7 separate congressional probes into the attack on the diplomatic mission at Benghazi, an attack that killed 4 Americans. There have been 7 investigations. There have actually been 8 if you include the State Department's Independent Accountability Review Board. And in terms of Benghazi being a major political scandal, all of these investigations have found that there's just no there there. They did find fault with the State Department's inadequate security in Libya. But in terms of the Obama administration trying to cover it all up or bungling it in some glaring, obvious way, there's just no evidence for any of that. So that's why when House Speaker John Boehner announced the formation of yet another investigation into Benghazi, a lot of people asked, why? And now comes this. After 2 years of investigation, another committee, the House Intelligence Committee, has now apparently also found, quote, no deliberate wrongdoing by the Obama administration. Speaking to the San Francisco Chronicle, one of the committee's Democratic members, Congressman Mike Thompson, said that a forthcoming report, quote, confirms that no one was deliberately misled, no military assets were withheld, and no stand-down order to U.S. forces was given. Another Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, the ranking member, backed up that report with a press release to announce the findings. And that committee, the Intelligence Committee, voted unanimously last week. Democrats and Republicans voting together, they voted unanimously to declassify and release that report. Now, we're still waiting for the release, but so far, Republicans on the committee haven't mentioned the report or its pending declassification. Not a word on a report that took 2 years to put together and that they joined Democrats in voting last week to declassify. There was no mention on the House Republican for all things Benghazi. No mention of this at all. This is a site where they have linked to nearly every report and scrap of information about the Benghazi investigation so far. But there is nothing there about this new House Intelligence report that apparently is coming out soon. Nothing from the committee's Republican chairman, Mike Rogers. Over at Fox News, which has exhaustively detailed every hint of potential Benghazi trouble for the administration, we haven't heard a peep from them on this new report either. This is not the first time that a Republican-backed finding on Benghazi has found, well, nothing. Just a few months ago, the Republican chairman of the House Armed Services Committee came out and said that he was satisfied that nothing more could have been done by the military to protect the diplomatic mission in Benghazi. So now we apparently have yet another report set to conclude that there's just no big scandal when it comes to Benghazi. But Republicans aren't talking about that. But they are talking about going full steam ahead with their new select committee on Benghazi when Congress comes back in September. An investigation they've earmarked $3.3 million for. So when are we going to get to see this report? And will anything ever be enough to put a stop to all of the conspiracy theories about Benghazi? Joining us now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Select Committee on Benghazi. Congressman, thanks for joining us tonight. So the bottom line question to start with is, when are we going to get to see this report?
Well, I hope soon. It will depend on how quickly the CIA can declassify it. I have to say, though, that this is much in the CIA's interest to declassify because it largely concludes that the CIA had adequate security, acted properly during the events, that there were conflicting intelligence reports and threat streams coming in, but no advance notice of a particular attack and certainly no intent to deceive people in its initial and flawed assessment of how that protest began. So I think it's in the agency's interest to see that declassified, probably unlike the Senate report. So they may act on it with some speed.
You, obviously, you know your colleagues on this committee, Democratic and Republican, very well. You guys have been looking at this for 2 years. You guys voted, as we said, unanimously to declassify this report. Obviously, we know in the air, sort of in the conservative talk radio or whatever, you hear lots of conspiracy theories about Benghazi. But do you think the Republicans on this committee, your colleagues who you've worked with, do you think when this report comes out that they will speak up and say, you know what, guys? We looked at it. There's nothing to this. Do you expect them to say that based on your conversations with them?
No, I don't expect them to say that. I think members, some of the GOP members of the Select Committee still think that there is more to be found here, that there are some hidden facts, or that if they served on the Government Reform Committee and didn't have access to what another committee learned, that maybe there's information that they can collate in a different way. But as you point out, Steve, what we found after a pretty exhaustive investigation in the Intelligence Committee is that in terms of all of the conspiracy theories about there being a stand-down order, the State Department interfering with the military rescue, or military assets not used, or deliberate intent to deceive on talking points, basically this report says no, 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 no.
So what is it that you say that you don't expect they're going to be satisfied, they're going to be looking for more information? What is it? Have they given you a sense of what it is they think they might find? Some kind of unifying theory here at the end of this?
No, there isn't, and this is why the formation of this Select Committee was so controversial, because there have been these multiple reports, bipartisan reports, nonpartisan reports, like the State Department one you mentioned. So they haven't. I think in large part the Select Committee is still in search of a mission. One hearing we are going to have in September is something I recommended to the chair. If we're looking for something constructive to do and not retread the same old ground, let's look into how we are a couple years later in implementing recommendations of that Accountability Review Board in making our facilities around the world safer. That's something that requires continual monitoring to see how we're progressing. We are going to do that. I think that's constructive. But once we get beyond that, Steve, I'm not really sure where we can add value. And I'm concerned that I think the chairman of the committee is going to be under enormous pressure to produce something, to warrant the creation of the Select Committee, to warrant the millions they're spending on it. And that may be very hard to do without simply spinning whatever results we come up with like crazy.
And do you, just to give us a preview of how you think those committee hearings are going to go, what role do you see yourself playing as a Democrat on that committee, given what you've just said?
Well, look, I didn't think the committee should be formed, and I wasn't in favor of even participating on it. Now, we've made the decision, which I respect, to do that. So I view my role as trying to make something constructive out of this, trying to not only allay the concerns that some have about what may have gone on by things like the publication and declassification of the intelligence report, but also looking at things that haven't been examined already, or at least haven't been recently examined, like how are we doing prospectively in making our facilities more secure. The two most important questions, I think for people are, where are we in the hunt for those who are responsible, and how are we doing in protecting our people going forward? On the first question, we want to make sure we're not interfering with the criminal investigation, so there's a limited amount we can do there. But on that latter question, I think there is room for us to be productive. But I think we have to resist the effort to politicize this by simply dragging in high-profile witnesses that really can't necessarily contribute in an effort to either sway the midterms or motivate the base or those improper purposes.
All right, Congressman Schiff of California, thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate that.
You bet.
Despite calls from the backbenches of Congress, including one just today, it is still extremely unlikely that President Obama will be impeached, but he will be sued. Tonight, we mark the anniversary of something truly historic, the original smoking gun in political scandals, which tells us all about today's president, today's Congress, and how far we've come, probably in the wrong direction. Stay with us.